having your heritage and lineage, which speaks volumes of your understanding of our responsibility to the National Park Service. And with that, if you can give me your top priorities as you see them, because you know with the Great American Outdoors Act that we passed, we're committed to getting our parks up in the standard and deferred maintenance, eliminating some $6 to $9 billion in that arena. What's your thoughts and what's your highest priorities right now as you see it from the perch that you're in now versus the perch you'll be in very quickly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 priorities. One is the staff. One thing I've always learned in leadership, it's the people that are the most important, and therefore helping to improve the morale, listening to the staff, the long-term staff, and figuring out exactly what needs to be done to support them out in the field in order to be the good interpreters they are, to be able to take care of the parks in an appropriate way.
Well, parks are getting inundated right now with visitors because of the COVID, and people want a different lifestyle.
Yes.
So they're going to visit the parks.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And I'm understanding you're understaffed.
And we are. As I understand it, there is a 20% less staff than there were several years ago, but yet we've seen a 20% increase in parks. And so people are loving their parks to death. You know, the Senate has heard this since 1978, that this was coming and forthcoming, and so we have that backlog of maintenance. And I'm very grateful to all of you here and the Congress as a whole for passing the Great American Outdoors Act, and so that we are making investments back into that infrastructure, making investments back into the staff. And so, but it has to be done in a very clear and open way so that people can see the investments the American people are making into their national park system, and those investments are going to last for the next 50, 75 years or more. And so I'm committed to those 3 things early on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Barrasso.
Thanks, Mr. Crabtree.
Working with you. We have a challenge at the Valles Caldera National Preserve with illegal trespass cattle coming into the preserve from the neighboring Santa Fe National Forest. And these cattle are currently damaging the unique subalpine meadows, the wetlands on the caldera, and they're also having an impact on the preserve's world-class elk herd. I just wanted to ask you, if confirmed, would you work to ensure that the Valles Caldera has adequate fencing to keep trespass cattle out of the preserve?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for bringing this to my attention. You know, I looked at this issue last night, and yes, I am committed to figuring a way to ensure that there are no trespass issues and to working with the sister agencies as the Forest Service and the National Park staff to ensure the area is secured and preserved in the appropriate way.
There's a saying out west that fences make good neighbors, so I look forward to working with you on that issue. Mr. Crabtree.
Made a major investment in our public lands with the investments that we did in the Great American Outdoors Act, which this committee played a major role in, trying to alleviate the backlog in maintenance. And obviously, parks, as you know, in the Pacific Northwest are big business. They generate $2.3 billion in state and local revenue in our state and over 100,000 jobs on all public lands. So helping to fix the backlog in maintenance, we have $427 million in deferred maintenance. There are projects at Olympic National Park. It's a 50-year-old water treatment facility that needs upgrading, and we need investing in campgrounds at Mount Rainier and sidewalks and visitor center upgrades at Paradise. So are those things that you can commit to taking care of this backlog and maintenance in our national parks?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I'm committed to reviewing all of that in the process that's currently the National Park Service is using. While I'm not currently in the service, I've been talking with a number of folks about this. I'm committed to making sure those that are in most critical need of repair are prioritized so that they can be taken care of. And again, with an eye on ensuring that they will be usable for the next 50 to 75 years.
Thank you. Do you believe there are enough staff on the ground to begin work on improving our parks?
Well, Senator, as you know, and thank you for the question, as you know, the staff are down by 20% from just several years ago. I think that there needs to be some looking at restaffing so that we can get more boots on the ground to help with these issues.
And how would you suggest we do that?
It'll be looking at figuring out the workforce development and how workforce development and recruitment currently is going on, ensuring that we are preparing the next generation of rangers to be able to be in that part of that workforce by having a diverse workforce and recruiting those folks to come in. The federal government has a number of ways of doing that, and I look forward, if confirmed, of working on those ways to ensure that there are avenues for more folks to come into the service.
So how will we ensure to put dollars efficiently at the National Park Service? I guess I look at this and think, look at yourself, look at other people in the Park Service, I feel like I've met so many young people who've come from all over the United States. I think about our former colleague, Congressman Dingle, who told me that he worked in our national park system. Like, this is a job a lot of people would like. So how do we increase this opportunity and communication to people, particularly at this time?
Thank you, Senator. You have to go out and recruit people where they're at, not where you want them to come. And I think we need to get out to the community and be able to do that. You know, I had the great pleasure when I worked for City Volunteer Corps of New York in the 90s of working at Grant's Tomb. And that's really what inspired me to think of, you know, how does the National Park Service work? What does it protect and preserve? And how do we get people on there? My own experience is when you walk into the footsteps of your fellow Americans in these places, these hallowed halls, these hallowed lands, you get that invigoration. And so if we can go out and recruit people, bring them into the parks, show them that, and show them that there are career paths forward for them, I think that's how we get the recruitment done.
Thank you. Senator Marshall.
Okay. And child, and my wife and I were having the conversation of what's next in life. And we went through our bucket list. And as I recall the conversation, it started off like, we've done your bucket list, and now it's time for her bucket list. And on the bucket list was to go to every national park in the United States. And we've made a big dent at that. I didn't realize 423 areas that we got to get to now. So that's quite a challenge. Would you describe that you have a labor shortage or a labor problem right now at the National Park Service?
Thank you, Senator. I believe there is just a lack of staffing. We're down 20% for a number of reasons. So when you look at that and the amount of people that are coming into the parks, there's definitely a need for additional staff to help with the overcrowding issue, to ensure that the preservation is taking effect, to ensure we have enough interpreters out on the ground.
Do you any idea how many of the staff, what percentage are not vaccinated?
I do not have that information, Senator.
Do you think a vaccine mandate would make the labor shortage worse when it goes into effect?
You know, I would look to the CDC and the administration on that.
I understand that, and I do too. I support vaccines, but if your industry is like every industry I know, 20-30% of people are not vaccinated yet, and encourage those people to talk to their doctor about the pros and cons of the vaccine. But there's a large number, and I think you would agree with me that it could have make a bad problem even worse.
Thank you, Senator. I do. You know, I served as the incident commander for the Confederate Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation for the COVID-19, and I understand that importance of encouraging folks so that we can continue to make sure that work happened. But I will look to the administration and to CDC on any.
Of course. Yeah, Mr. Crabtree had a great conversation yesterday. You know as much about carbon capture.
During your time at Trust for Public Land, you worked with groups in Hawaii, including the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, to facilitate the acquisition of mention of your commitment to consulting various stakeholders if confirmed, but based on your experience, with indigenous communities in terms of increasing visitation, representation within the workforce.
Before it became, more of a memorial, I've watched the growth of America as a whole to be able to talk about the history openly and honestly. I look forward to working with Native communities across the United States, whether that's in your home state of Hawaii or Alaskan Natives and throughout the U.S. territories, to make sure that the story can be told as broadly as possible. And I think it's important to be able to work with Native folks on traditional ecological knowledge and helping manage those spaces so that we're conserving them based on 10,000 plus years of management of those spaces to ensure that they'll be here for future generations to enjoy.
So if confirmed, I look forward to the kind of specific outreach that you will engage in with indigenous groups. Particularly, I don't know if you have a copy of the letter that I just put into the record, but there are a number of Native Hawaiian groups that you have worked with over time. For Mr. Crabtree.
Environmental justice into future decision and efforts at your respective agency.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question. You know, environmental justice is an important issue across America. Folks, particularly people of color, have suffered disproportionately on some of those issues. I think that by listening to those communities and talking to stakeholders, we can find that balance to bring justice forward and to ensure that things are repaired in a way and that there are active voices in the community in those discussion points on how we do preservation in national parks.
Thank you. And, if appointed, I would hope that you would come to us and be candid with respect to your staffing concerns and issues that you've talked about, along with the backlog that we know is out there for our parks across the country. So please don't hesitate to come forward. Mr. Crabtree, there's no doubt you have extensive knowledge in direct air capture. And let me just ask you that.
Impact of increased visitation to our national parks and other park units. We've seen major increases of attendance at our national parks, parks like Yellowstone and Glacier, record visitation in some cases. Increased visitation can bring a lot of great benefits, more jobs, better revenues for our gateway communities, more people exploring and learning, and greater appreciation for the great outdoors. But increased visitation also has had an impact on our park employees, really stretching the limits on infrastructure as well as the landscapes. Mr. Sams, if confirmed, what actions would you consider taking to encourage visitation while also ensuring that our parks and our park employees are protecting the resources they need?
Well, thank you, Senator. First and foremost, I think that, our parks are crown jewels, and many Americans and even many foreigners come to our parks to come and look at it. And I think, but encouraging to have that displacement pushed out a little bit further to some of the national monuments and other parks that are not necessarily seeing as much visitors as we'd like them to. But I want to make sure that we have a campaign that is very inclusive to bring everybody into the park so that they can enjoy these spaces. Your discussion, and thank you for your conversation a couple weeks ago, the infrastructure issues that are needed to ensure that staff have housing, I think is a critical issue in figuring out this housing, whether that is the reconstruction of housing within the national park system for staff, or whether that's public-private partnerships on those gateway communities and working with local communities and figuring out how we can help do housing development so folks can move in. I know in your state, people are having to travel as much as 50 miles away just to get to their service duty station. And we need to be able to figure this out in those gateway communities and how to partner.
Yeah, as you know, many of us who represent Western states, they've discovered it's a great place to live, and we've got a lot of folks moving there. And it's putting a lot of pressure on housing market prices, whether it's buying or renting, and that directly affects employees, whether they're directly involved with the Park Service or the supporting businesses. Mr. Sams, last year we passed the historic Great America Outdoors Act. It really, I think, is one of these great achievements in conservation, perhaps the greatest achievement in 50 years, will help restore and invest in our national parks. If confirmed, you'll be in charge of implementing that program. What actions will you take to implement this important legislation that we passed, and how will you ensure that funding is distributed fairly among the parks in the states, no matter their location or their size?
Thank you, Senator. While I'm not in the service, and if confirmed, I do want to work with the dedicated staff there and really ensure how we're going about how projects are being ranked and how the money is going out is a very transparent process, and that information is shared, of course, with the committee and the subcommittee on those issues, and wanting to make sure, if you will, the best bang for the buck, ensuring that the investments that the American people are making are going to those critical pieces of infrastructure so that they will be sustainable for the next 50 to 75 years, looking at new technologies and ways to bring those technologies out onto the ground and find where those cost savings are.
Mr. Sams, thank you. Chairman Phillips, as you